Deepwater Horizon oil spill is now of biblical proportions. There is still a hole in the earth. Crude oil is still spewing from it. And there is no end in sight. After trying and trying again, one of the world's largest corporations, backed and pushed by the world's most powerful government, can't stop the runaway gusher. As desperation grows and ecological misery spreads, the operative word on the ground now is, incredibly, perhaps, maybe, August. The earliest moment that a real resolution could be at hand, theoretically. And even then, there's no guarantee of success. For the United States and the people of its beleaguered Gulf Coast, a dispiriting summer of oil and anger lies dead ahead. And yes, the Atlantic hurricane season begins tomorrow. The latest attempt, using a remote robotic arm to stuff golf balls and assorted debris into the gash in the seafloor, didn't work. On Sunday, as churches echoed with prayers for a solution, BP PLC said it would focus on containment rather than plugging the undersea puncture wound, effectively redirecting the mess it made rather than stopping it. Yes, this is a long-term catastrophe or a disaster. We failed to wrestle this beast to the ground, said BP Managing Director Bob Dudley during the rounds of the Sunday talk shows. And now, hurricane season is at hand. Trouble is, the longer it lasts, the more beasts emerge ready to wrestle. Crude-coated birds are becoming a frequent sight along coastal areas. At the sea's bottom, no one knows what the oil will do to species like the newly discovered bottom-dwelling pancake batfish and others that remain unknown but just as threatened. Yes, extinction of species is also at hand. Perhaps most alarming of all, 41 days and 41 nights after the Deepwater Horizon blew up and began the underwater deluge, hurricane season is coming. It brings a terrifying, horrifying possibility of wind-whipped, oil-soaked waves and water spinning ashore and coating areas much further inland. Imagine Hurricane Katrina plus the oil spill. On its own, the spill is already the worst in American history. Much worse, even, than the 1989 Exxon Valdez disaster. It has released somewhere between 18 million and perhaps more than 40 million gallons of oil into the Gulf, according to government estimates. That are, like all numbers involved in this disaster, subject to vigorous debate. Actually, it could be much worse than that. This is the biggest environmental disaster we've ever faced in this country. Fear is afoot everywhere, and polarization prevails. Faith in institutions, corporations, government, the media is down. Americans are angry, apprehensive, and they long ago grew accustomed to expecting the resolution of problems in very short order, even if reality rarely works that way. No, it's not like Hollywood. There are people who are getting desperate. So, when something undefined and uncontrollable happens, they speculate on all the modern forms about collusion and nefarious dealings. In the process, this tale of environmental disaster and economic damage cripples the sea to shining sea narrative that usually offers Americans comfort during uncertain times. These are people who are getting desperate, and there are more getting anxious as we get further into the shrimping season, and there is less chance they will recover. Yes, these are more signs. It's time. Ezekiel chapter 13, verse 17. Likewise, thou son of man, set thy face against the daughters of thy people, which prophesize out of their own heart, and prophesize thou against them. 18. And say, Thus saith the Lord God, Woe to the women that sew pillows to all armholes, and make kerchiefs upon the head of every stature to hunt souls. Will ye hunt the souls of my people, and will ye save the souls alive that come unto you? 19. And will ye pollute me among my people for handfuls of barley, and for pieces of bread or money, to slay the souls that should not die, and to save the souls alive that should not live, by your lying to my people that hear your lies? 20. Wherefore, thus saith the Lord God Almighty, Behold, I am against your pillows, wherewith ye there hunt the souls to make them fly, and I will tear them from your arms, and will let the souls go, even the souls that ye hunt to make them fly. And yes, there are many signs happening daily all around the world. And streaming video of oil pouring from the seafloor and images of dead, crude-soaked birds serve as visual bookends to the natural calamity unfolding in the Gulf of Mexico. But independent scientists and government officials say another disaster is playing out in slow motion and out of public view. In the mysterious depths between the gusher and the coast, a world inhabited by whales, gigantic jellyfish, and tiny plankton. More than a month after the BP PLC spill began, the disaster's dimensions have come into sharper focus. Much sharper. Every fish, every animal or creature contacting the oil is probably dying. And that's bad. Ripples across the food chain. The deep Gulf is an area where light can't penetrate, and researchers rarely venture. Yet what happens there can ripple across the food chain. Every night, the denizens of the deep make forays to shallower depths to eat, and be eaten by other fish, according to marine scientists, who describe it as the largest migration on Earth. In turn, several species closest to the surface, including red snapper, shrimp, and other creatures, help drive the Gulf Coast fishing industry. Others, such as marlin, cobia, and yellowfin tuna, sit atop the food chain and are chased by the Gulf's charter fishing industry or fleet. Many of those species are now in their annual spawning seasons. Eggs exposed to oil would quickly perish. Those that survived to hatch could starve to death if the plankton at the base of the food chain suffer. Larger fish are more resilient but not immune to the toxic effects of oil. Since BP's Deepwater Horizon exploded and sank more than 5 weeks ago, scientists say they have found at least 2 huge underwater plumes of what appears to be oil, each hundreds of feet deep and stretching for many miles. Oil in the plumes had dissolved into the water, possibly a result of chemical dispersants used to break up the spill. So that makes it even more dangerous to the fish and creatures that are filter feeders. This is just a giant experiment going on, and we're trying to understand scientifically what this means, said Roger Helm, a senior official of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Yes, they're going to disappear. This is a massive disaster, and these are more signs.